Creating a great relationship with yourself or anyone else is all about creating healthy habits. Getting into the habit of identifying and regulating your own feelings, your emotions, getting into the habit of being mindful in your conversations, or getting into the habit of resisting urges that sabotage you getting to your goals. Yeah, put down your phone and the Oreos. So, creating a great relationship with yourself or others is also about breaking bad habits, such as judging, criticizing, or thinking your well being is hinged on other people acting a certain way. The research is clear on what it takes to make healthy habits and let go of destructive ones, but there's a not so secret to doing it right. Yeah, there's one big mistake I see most people make when they're trying to change a habit, and it's why it doesn't work or it doesn't work long term. So, whether you're here to change your relationship, your eating, or some other part of your life that's not working, today you'll learn the secret to making new habits that stick. So, stay tuned. Hello again. So glad you're here. You know, I'm Dr. Abby Medcalf and relationship maven and all around person who wants to help you, AKA bossy Jewish mother. So before I jump in, and I am always really excited about today's episode because I'm giving you the goods today. And I have a great download for you to go with this to really make it all work. So, get ready to jump in. And before I do the give, I have an ask, and that is that I'm going to be starting a Patreon in January of 2025. And I would love to hear what you would like. What would be so great? Obviously you can listen to the podcast without ads, which might really be your only thing you need to, want to pay for something. But what else, is there anything else you would really love? Like, maybe a Zoom with me every month, like something live where you could ask questions directly. I don't know. What is it that you would, that would make it so worth it to come on over and, have a different kind of relationship with me? So let me know. You can comment under this video. You can send me an email at abby@abbymedcalf.com. You can DM me on any social media platform, whatever. Let me know. All right. So let's get to it. And we have to start this conversation with how long it takes to really change a habit. Before we go anywhere else, I want to dispel some myths because there has been so much written and said about how long it takes to change a habit. And I've heard everything from 13 days, I've heard 13 weeks, I've heard 6 months, I've heard all kinds, 3 days, all kinds of things. And why all the confusion? It's because, facts get stated in a blog or an IG reel and everyone jumps on it without really checking if it's true or not. And I always come to you with really good, solid research that backs up what I talk about. As always, it'll be linked below the video if you're watching me on YouTube. Please like and subscribe if you are, and definitely leave a comment. I love hearing them. Or on the website, wherever you can go into the show notes page or the podcast page, as I always mention, and you can get all the links and all that. Okay. For everything I'm talking about, the downloads, everything will be there. So the good news is that there really has been research, so much of it in this area, and we really do know how long it takes to change a habit. And again, even within all the research, of course, people disagree some and say different things. But for me, some of the best research comes from Philippa Lally I hope I said her name right. It's Lally. I think it's Lally. She's at University College London, and she and her research team found that it takes, on average, drumroll, 66 days to make a new habit. And if you've read Atomic Habits by James Clear, he quotes her research quite a bit too. Again, most of us sort of go with this research, but there is other research, but this is what I'm sticking to and what I'm going to be talking about today. So because that's an average of 66 days, I tell people to give themselves 3 months to change a habit because you don't know where you are on the spectrum, right? That average, you don't know if you're on the light end or the heavier end or whatever. But if you give it 3 months, in my experience, with, again, working with literally thousands of people over the years, I have found that this seems to be a magic number. So that's what I'm going to say to you. put down 3 months in your calendar for whatever you want this new thing to be before you decide it isn't working or is. But I'm also going to give you that little secret to why it hasn't worked in the past. But let's talk and I'm going to lead into that by talking about what a habit is. What is a habit? We're talking about them. We should define them, right? Your brain is always looking for the easiest ways of doing things so it can conserve energy. Your brain is so smart this way. And this efficiency that your brain always has is what we call a habit. Does that make sense? The easiest way of doing something, the quickest way. Research shows that as many as 40% of your daily actions are based on habits, so not conscious decisions. So much of what you do every day, and actually I've seen some research quoting closer to 55%. So let's even say somewhere close to half of what you do all day is a habit. You're not consciously, even if you think you are, you're not. It's there. And there's a wonderful book I've quoted a lot, The Power of Habits by Charles Duhigg. I hope I said his name right. And he describes habit as a 3-part sequence. And this is where the secret comes in, okay? That where people get it wrong. And this is how you get things to be different. So there's 3 parts to a habit. There's the external cue. So it's something that happens in your environment. You walk in your house after a long day at work, let's say. Okay. So that's the cue. There's a routine that follows. And this is usually what you do when this particular cue presents itself. So you walk in the house after work, and let's say you always go right to the kitchen and root around for something to eat, usually some unhealthy snack, or you always pour yourself a martini, or you always sit and scroll through social media when you're supposed to be doing other things, or you sort of have a habit of what you do, the routine, of what you do when you walk in the door. So the cue is walking in your house. The habit is the thing you always do when you walk in the house. And the reward, the third part of the sequence is a reward. So there's cue, routine, reward, okay? And the reward is that feeling of success or getting something you need, okay? So now I can really relax, okay? now I can relax. Now I've come home. Do you see what I mean there? There's something there. Now, again, you can put a healthy habit in here too. So I'll just share really quickly. For me, I come home. I do have an office out. If you're watching me on YouTube, this is not my house. This is my office, which is not at my home. So I walk in my home after work, after I'm done in the office. When I walk in, I always had trouble at the end of the night taking off my makeup and having a good skincare routine. I still don't have a great one, I'm not going to lie, skincare routine, but I do at least take off my makeup every day. And for me, it's when I walk in the house, and the kids know, everybody knows, the first thing I do is I go into my bedroom, and I usually change out of my work clothes because I'm going to cook dinner or do something else, and I don't want to get my nice work clothes dirty. But I also, if I'm not wearing something really nice that day, we'll just stay in it. But what I do is I go in, I immediately take off all my makeup. I do my skincare routine then. So sometimes that's 3 in the afternoon, sometimes it's 5 o'clock, 4 o'clock, whatever, or even 2 in the afternoon. It doesn't matter. That is when I do that. Unless, of course, I know I'm going out for dinner later or something that I'm going out later, I leave my makeup on. But the vast majority of the time, I'm a little homebody after work, after I've been out all day. So I'm home. And for me, that's and it kind of shifts my energy into now I'm home, now I'm mom or, partner, wife, whatever, now I'm this other person, like I'm the other Abby. And so for me, I've created this habit where I've put in healthy habits of getting off my makeup, having a skincare routine. I'm old. And so, doing some nice lotions and ablutions for my face, right? Doing all that. So do you see where I'm going here? So you can do it in that way too. I just find that really helpful. Okay. So it's hard to kick a habit because they're super resilient. They are stored in the basal ganglia, which is a part of your brain for learning and maintaining habits. That's how efficient the brain is. It's got a whole part just set aside for learning and maintaining habits because they're so important to our survival. In fact, even if you're brain injured often or not functioning normally for some other reason, have a TBI, traumatic brain injury, or something else, this part of your brain almost always still works. It's so protected because habits are so important for survival. That's why, again, one of the reasons it's really hard to change them. So habits were created to help us survive. You are here listening right now because your ancestors were excellent at maintaining habits. I mean, that's really the bottom line. And kicking a habit is hard because you develop a craving for the reward at the end of the habit loop. Remember, again, you got a cue, you have a routine you get into, and then the reward. So there's a craving you get for the reward that's at the end of the loop. And the craving is what makes the habit stick. Once you become used to that cue, routine, reward habit, your brain anticipates the reward even before you get it. You know, you've been at work dreaming of a martini or whatever, right? You know, you've been in class waiting for, the end of class to walk to your other class to go have a cigarette or whatever, or to have a snack or whatever it is that you do. And if you deny the reward, when you deny yourself, so you're saying, oh, I'm going to quit smoking, so I'm not going to have a cigarette when I walk to my next class, right? Or vape or whatever you might be doing. When you deny the reward, you get frustrated and grumpy. Yeah, I know it sounds familiar, doesn't it? So when I say craving here, I'm not just talking about food, sex, or drugs, okay? Craving is an intense, urgent, powerful feeling for doing something, saying, having something. So if your partner forgets, let's say, to pick up after themselves or asks you for the 5th time to take out the garbage, you might find yourself having an immediate, urgent desire to lash out at them or to make them feel bad because, maybe you feel bad about something. And this is really a habit loop. It's something that's been reinforced over time. Think about it. If you were on your second date walking out of the house and that person who's now your partner had asked you to turn off the lights on the way out of the house, I don't think you would have shouted at them. I don't think you'd be like, I got it. You don't need to remind me about everything, right? No, you wouldn't have thought much of it. It's the repetition that creates the issue. Your partner asking this every day for the last 4 years, that's the problem. As with most things we crave, it's the repetition of it. It's the having and the thinking about that reward. So changing habits, relationship habits, something that you're in a habitual pattern of with a partner or your kids or your mom or whoever, is just like changing other habits. And that's why, again, today I hope is special for you because when I'm giving all this information all the time about how to be different in your relationships, really we're talking about creating healthy relationship habits, right? And you have to understand what it is to change a habit to be able to do that. Okay. So there are 2 crucial keys to changing habits. Okay. One is that you need to substitute the routine for something else. This is the secret. You respond to the craving, okay, but you substitute something healthy. So you're not resisting the craving, you're just redirecting it. The cues and the rewards stay the same. I'm hoping I'm saying this well. I want to say this really well. The mistake most people make when they're trying to change a habit is that they try to change the reward, and you shouldn't change the reward. You have to change the routine, and I'm going to teach you how to do that today, okay? So you might think, I always have, there's always junk food in the break room, right? There's always all this junk food in the break room at your job. So you think, and you always go in there and you end up eating things you don't want to eat. So you go, I know I'm going to do, but you like to hang out in the break room because you like to have some social time with, your coworkers. You think, I'm going to get some carrots and I'm going to eat those carrots instead in the break room. That's a problem because the cue is the same. It's time for a break. The routine is the same. You're going into the break room and you're hanging out. What you're changing is the reward. You're eating a carrot instead of a cupcake. I don't think so, my friend. That is why that doesn't work. That is why that is so hard to do. Now, if you can muscle through that for about 3 months, you could probably make that habit change long term. But that's pretty hard. You probably give that up after a week or two, or maybe if you're me, you give it up after a day. It doesn't feel good, and you get grumpy and irritated and frustrated, and you hate all your coworkers who are eating cupcakes, right? You end up hating other people. Not so good. All right, so that's the first thing to change. You have to understand that you have to change the routine, not the cue, the reward. Now you can change the cues, but we'll get there later. But the second thing is you need to believe in the change. You've got to believe in the possibility of changing yourself, right? This makes you stronger when the stressful stuff comes up. This is what helps you when you're stressed, not go back to vaping, because you have to believe you can do it. And as someone who, stopped using heroin and was in many, many rehabs and had many, many times of trying to stop, I will tell you that you start to lose faith in yourself. Or if you've tried to lose 10 pounds over and over and you always gain it back or whatever, usually when we're trying to change a habit, we've already tried many times. If you're listening right now, it's something, I try and I do it for a couple of weeks and then it stops, or a month or whatever. And again, it's because of this way you're doing it that's wrong. So I'm going to teach you again right next, how to be better at the routine change, but you also have to believe in yourself. So somewhere you need to have that self-efficacy, that belief that I can make this change. And so it's really about not giving up on yourself. And maybe for today, it's just, well, I'm listening to Abby. I have this new way to approach it, and I believe I can change with a new approach. But it's also why making small changes and being successful at them helps us make larger changes later. I did an interview a long time ago. I will link to that. I don't do many interviews, as you know, on the podcast, but BJ Fogg, who wrote Tiny Habits, he's a researcher at Stanford, is really one of my heroes when it comes, and he has different ideas he doesn't go with the 66-day thing. So I just want to say that, but he does go with these tiny habits. So for me, I put the two together. That when you change something really small, what happens is somebody wants to start working out, for example, like, I got to start working out. I got to start exercising. And they immediately join a boot camp. And his thing is like, no, get out of bed and do one push-up against a wall. And then do that every day. And then maybe make it 3 push-ups against the wall, right? Right. Maybe get up, go pee, and then do some push-ups against a wall. I think that's what one of the examples he gives. Like a tiny habit. And you just start to build on that and build on that. I often, when I have a client who says to me, I'm going to join a gym, I'm like, no, you're not. No, you're not. Because the more we try something and fail, the worse it is. So I'll say to them, tell you what, you can join a gym if after you start walking after dinner for 5 minutes. 5 minutes after dinner, you get consistent with that for, I'll just say to them a month. You do that for 30 days straight after you eat an evening meal, and you go walk outside for just 5 minutes. 5 minutes. Then we can talk about you joining a gym. And I will tell you that 99.9% of people do not join the gym at that point, because if you can't get yourself to go walk for 5 minutes after, which is the easiest, one of the most low-hanging fruit things you can do, then what are your chances of like putting on sweats, going to the gym, finding parking, getting inside, not knowing how to use the equipment, not, feeling like your butt looks too big in your sweats and feeling self-conscious. Are you kidding me? Like, go walk after dinner for a few minutes. But this is what happens for people. We take too big a leap, and Dr. Fogg says to do that differently. And the book Tiny Habits is excellent. If you haven't read it yet, I highly recommend it. And again, I'll link to that interview. So you can, if you want to just listen to that, you'll get a little, Reader's Digest version. Does anybody know what Reader's Digest is anymore? Have I dated myself? It's like the Cliff Notes that also might be dating myself. But anyway, it's a shortened version, people. It's a way to get things in a small dose. All right. So the mistake, again, that most people make is that they try to change the cue or the reward instead of the routine. Okay, so I want to give you a real life example of this to walk you through, and then I'll give you lots of other examples so you can, because you got to get this part. So I worked with a couple who were fighting. A lot of their fighting was because the morning times were super intense in their household. They had two boys, 12 and 14, and getting everyone to work and to school each morning had created a ton of tension. So there was often like fighting, nagging, yelling. So by the time both adults got to work, they were already feeling frustrated and annoyed, usually with each other, okay, and the kids, but definitely with each other. And they kept trying to bribe the kids to get up on their own with, promises, I'll increase your allowance, or threatening to punish them. Again, this is screwing around with the reward, right? Uh, and the couple were both sleeping as late as possible, as so many of my clients do in the morning, so they could get in, I have to sleep, I need every minute, I need every second, right, before dealing with their day. The issue was them trying to do something different with the reward. They kept trying to change the reward, trying to bribe the kids, threatening to take things away. And, the kids weren't biting. Yeah, again, they might do it for a minute. Oh, yeah, okay, I'll wake up so I can get more allowance, or I can get the new video game I want. And then they'd give up really quickly. So I taught them this system. And so now they have to look at the routine. Now, and there were a lot of ways they could have addressed their routine. And we did try a few things that did not work. But what ultimately worked, so sometimes you have to screw around with the routine. I guess I want to say that. Don't think you're like, oh, I have the answer. There it is. Boom. Sometimes it does. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes you change the routine and it's not quite the right thing. So what ultimately worked was both of the parents waking up just 15 minutes earlier. 15 minutes. This gave them time to get themselves together completely before waking their boys, or more completely before waking the boys. And this meant they had time. And they also started waking up the boys 5 minutes earlier than needed. Okay. So with the idea that they didn't have to get right out of bed, but each parent took a kid and just sat on the bed with them. So they'd each wake up 15 minutes early. They'd start their own routines. They'd get in the shower. They'd do whatever. They'd, start to breakfast maybe, or whatever they were doing. But they got a 15-minute head start, which is huge, believe it or not. I know it doesn't sound like much, but it is. And then instead of, yelling to the boy, get up, yelling, they actually went in, and each of them, and they would switch off, but they took a few minutes. And because I said to them, like, it's a wonderful time to bond with your boys, because especially if anybody out there has teenage boys, raise your hand. I had one. He's not now, but I am recently off the teenage boy at home thing. And I will tell you that they're not always as amenable to the snuggling as you would like, but they're very helpless in the morning. So, I mean, that is a time when I could really, snuggle up on Max, just I would rub his back, and that's what I had them do, nothing too crazy. You don't want to be in a, you don't want to do something your kids don't like just because they're tired. But what I found was my Max actually enjoyed this sort of, my sort of sitting with him and us having a moment. And that's what these parents told me their teenagers did too. It's like, you get past the ego part of it and you get to the good stuff. And they would just sort of be there very gently, waking them up. No yelling, no threats from yelling from the kitchen to get out of bed. No bribes were offered. They just sat with them and cajoled them until they actually got out of bed. Kids want to get out of bed. If you're sitting there on their bed with them, as nice as can be, as loving as can be, they're going to get up. And they also worked on changing some of the routines in the evening so that mornings could be easier. So like checking that backpacks were totally ready to go, any athletic gear or other needs, they found those things at night instead of a mad dash in the morning, right? That made a huge, huge difference. They saw such improvement that they actually moved their wake up time to 30 minutes earlier, and actually had sex in the morning a few times. That is a good way to start your day in a good mood. I will tell you that right now. But they also noticed that the boys were in much better moods in the morning. They said that to me almost immediately, because all that tension, the crazy, the rushing was gone. So, and again, this is not to say mornings were perfect and there were never last minute homework assignments forgotten or, cleats left at home. But overall, the mornings became completely different experiences and the rewards actually became better, right? So right now, I want you to think of a new habit you'd like to create, something you'd like to create. Maybe it's one you failed at being consistent with previously. I'd like you to do this as a short, and I think a written exercise. And again, so that's like kind of your gift. I have a download. It's a quick. I call it a quick sheet because it's like a worksheet, but it's quick. That you can download to go along with this if you want, right? But basically, you're going to write down the habit you want to change, and you're going to um, do the what's my usual routine, what's the cue, what's my usual routine, and what is the reward. And this is what's really important, that you understand that changing the routine and the reward kind of have to go together. So I will tell you, I have another client who was trying not to. She would often get home and immediately like have a glass of wine, and she was really trying not to do that. She didn't want it anymore, and she would cook dinner while drinking wine. Okay. And but she would also just sort of get ready for people, and dealing with the kids and everything else. And she'd have wine. And alcohol was becoming a little bit of a problem for her. Again, I don't, alcoholic or not, we don't need to label it. I don't know what it was, but we knew this was a habit that wasn't serving her. It was adding a lot of calories to her day. It was making her feel very disconnected, numb. And she said, I don't like feeling controlled by something. And I am like really looking forward to this glass of wine more than I want to. And right, remember the anticipation of the reward, like you can't wait to get it. So again, I had to write this down. What's the cue? So the cue was, even she realized, because she would think about it at work. Oh, I can't wait to have a glass of wine. I can't wait, right? The cue was really, when you think about it, starting to feel overwhelmed with her day. She wasn't thinking about a drink after work at 8 a.m. She wasn't thinking about it at noon either. She was started to think about it usually. I said, I want you to notice when you start to think about it. It was generally around 2:33, sometimes 3 o'clock, 4, somewhere in the 2:30 to 4 o'clock range. She started to really anticipate this. And that's a lot to do with feeling just done, right? With your day. So the cue also becomes walking into your home, right? So there's a cue of this sort of overwhelm, this being done with the day. It's often cues are from transitions. Often when we're transitioning from one thing to another, we get sort of a cue, an urge, and the urge comes up. So it could be time of day for you. Think about every day, maybe around 12 o'clock, you feel like eating lunch. There's a cue, sometimes time of day, sometimes a feeling. They can be different things that are this cue. Sometimes it's your alarm going off in the morning. That's a cue to get out of bed. Any of these things, right, or that kind of thing. Then the routine she had was always walking in the door, right? Going to open a bottle of wine. Like, it's kind of the first thing she did. And we even talked about that. I got really down to it with her. She parks in her car in the garage. She would go in through the garage, and often she would take a bottle of wine. There was a refrigerator in the garage. She would grab a bottle of wine from there because she always knew how much wine she had left in the house. And she always liked to have, she didn't like to have multiple bottles in her refrigerator in her kitchen. She said it felt funny, but she would bring one in every day because she'd go through a half a bottle, 2 or 3 glasses of wine a night. That's almost going through a bottle a night, or sometimes a bottle a night. So but she, so there was like this routine, right? Grab the bottle, go in the house, put it in the fridge, take the bottle that was already open. There was usually something left, and pour that while she then walked around and did stuff. She would put down her bag. There was a thing. This is how nitty gritty I want you to get. I want you to really see what the routine is. Now, and so I had to write that down. Now, the reward is what gets tricky for people. Some people, like for her, I said, well, what's your reward? She said, oh, feeling buzzed. And I said, that's not really the reward. I want you to really think deeper. Like, yeah, okay. But what is it really? Because think of the cue. You're feeling stressed. You want to transition. You're a little bit uncomfortable, a little bit anxious. Usually anxiety is pushing something, an urge or a craving. whatever that is, that release she was looking for, it was a release she was looking for. And I call it the big exhale, a feeling of freedom, a feeling of exhale, a feeling of relaxation, a feeling of disconnecting, not having to be so on, right? So on all day at work and with her kids all morning before they got to school. And, all day of being on, it felt good to have this off. And this is the way her brain had connected to have an off button, was with this wine. So she could give herself permission to not think about everybody before herself. And that's what you really get to when you start looking at rewards. What are you really getting? Sometimes, by the way, a cue can be boredom. Sometimes when people are bored, they get kind of uncomfortable and anxious, and they immediately go to food or pot or, whatever your thing is, or spending money or shopping on the internet. Sometimes boredom, loneliness is often a cue or a trigger, right? It's a trigger, basically. A cue is a trigger. So that kind of cue to the routine, the trigger for the routine. And again, what's the routine? I always sit on the couch in this space. I always get my iPad out to shop. I have certain sites I always go to buy clothes, right? Or is this just me? Wait, am I outing myself? Okay. So, but do you see what I'm saying? And then how do I feel? Oh, I feel that little dopamine hit when I buy something. I feel excited. I can't wait to get a package. It's so fun to get a package at home, something new to wear or eat or whatever it is your thing is. Do you see where I'm going here? This is all what I need you to write down. And again, you can download the quick sheet below the video, or you can go over to my website and just look for this particular podcast episode, or on the relationship tips and tools page. There's always a corresponding blog with all of the links and everything. And you can download the quick sheet and you can do this in real time. So, and I want to talk about one last area to create new healthy habits that's going to really help you in this. And those are called action triggers. And I love the work of Dr. Peter Gollwitzer. He's at NYU, and he's really a pioneer in the research on action triggers. So here's the deal. This is going to help you with this whole thing, okay? Basically, action triggers can be broken down into if this, then that. Okay? If this, then that. So you would say to yourself, today, after I finish my 11 o'clock meeting, I'm going to go to the gym. So if, the meeting, when it finishes, then that, I'm going to go to the gym. And Gollwitzer says, what's important is you've already made the decision to execute a certain action. In this case, right, it's working out. And so when you encounter a certain situational trigger, like completing your 11 o'clock meeting every day, by preloading the decision, we conserve our allotment of willpower. We conserve our self-control. And I did an entire episode on how to have more discipline and self-control, and I will link to that in the notes. So action triggers help protect your goals and new habits from distractions and whatever might be competing, like other bad behaviors competing with what you're trying to do. This is also one thing I do with a lot of my parents, people who are dropping off their kids, is I say to them, put on your gym clothes before, and you drop off the kids and you go straight to the gym. Don't go home first. Don't do anything else. Don't answer emails. Just boom, boom. The key is that your action triggers need to be specific enough and visible enough to interrupt your normal thinking. Okay? So you can see how truly powerful action triggers are when you look at all the unhealthy habits you've created with action triggers. Yeah. I remember when I quit smoking many years ago. Yeah, I smoked for years. I also had to quit drinking coffee because the two just went together in my head. I would always have a cigarette and coffee. So there were action triggers for each other. And I had a really hard time quitting smoking, which I think most people do anyway. But when I allowed that other thing to still be there. And you know what I'll see a lot? I have clients who only smoke cigarettes when they drink. Or again, maybe you go straight to the refrigerator whenever you walk in the house after work. Action triggers basically create instant habits, which turn into behavioral autopilot for better or for worse. So again, we can use them for good. We have them for evil. You have to think about it. And action triggers can be incredibly successful in helping you reach your goals, especially when you're trying to tackle a really hard one. And Goldwitzer's research shows that with easy goals, it's so interesting. With easy goals, using action triggers only slightly increase success from 78 to about 84%. All right. So it still helps, but with difficult goals, which I think most of you right now are listening with a difficult goal that you've really been trying to accomplish, like being nicer to your partner, losing 10 pounds, stopping smoking, whatever your thing is. But with difficult goals, action triggers almost tripled the chance of success. Goal completion jumped, are you ready? Get this, from 22 to 62%. Holy cannoli, Batman. Oh my gosh. And then it gets better. There was the meta study done analyzing over 8,000 people across 85 studies. And they found that those who set action triggers did better, are you ready, than 74% of people on the same task who didn't set one. So that's why I'm taking a minute to talk about action triggers. As you're doing all the things I'm talking about, as you're changing the routine and you're really thinking about that, I want you to think of action triggers. So start to think about what action triggers you can put into your relationship with yourself, right? Those habits you're trying to change with yourself or your relationship with someone else to get you some positive results. What 2 things could you consciously and consistently put together to achieve a stated goal? I really want you to think about that. So my personal favorite, if you're trying to change how you interact with your partner or your kids, is, I've talked about it a million times, to set an intention before you walk in your house. That's what I do every day for how you want to be when you greet everyone. So the trigger can be when you turn off your car, you set intention, right? When you drive up to your house, you turn off your car, you set intention. For me, I stop my car a little bit before the house and I just take a minute and I end the day. But I have another client who, for him, it's when he puts his hand on the doorknob, like literally on the doorknob, or when he's using his key to open the door. That's when he sets intentions, because he said otherwise from the car to the house, he would forget. So set your intentions as you walk up the front steps, whatever it is. Right then, you'd set a healthy intention and then walk in the door. So, hitting the doorknob or getting your keys out to open your front door is the trigger to set an intention, something like that. But I have a lot of really good examples from my clients. So I've had them say, I set intention before I get out of my car to walk into my job. That's another good one, right? After dropping off the kids at school, I go right to the gym. I hear that one a lot. When I walk in the house, I go straight to my partner and greet them before I do anything else. I've shared with you many times here on the podcast that when Gary or I get home, we wait, if one of us, whoever's home, waits for the other one at the door when we hear the car pull up. So, and we greet at the door. That's an action trigger. I hear the car, he hears the car, and we go to the door. Another really good one I hear is when you're brushing your teeth, look in the mirror and tell yourself 3 things you appreciate about yourself or your life or your relationship, right? When your alarm goes off in the morning, you get up, you put your feet on the floor, you set an intention for the day before you get out of bed. Do you see this? I used to drive to work. I still do this sometimes. I see meditation every day is such a habit for me that I don't have to focus too hard on it because it's so ingrained, which is really nice. And trust me, it wasn't for a long time. But one of my favorites was because I would get anxious about meditating at home because I felt like I had to get to work. I was always worried something was going to happen. It was my personality, even though my work was 10 minutes from home, I get anxious. So instead, what I would do is I would drive to work, park my car, sit in my car, and meditate for 5 minutes before going into the office. I like that before coming up here into my office. Works really well. Maybe anytime before you eat anything, you pray first, right? I have other clients, and I had a couple originally who did this, and I've since suggested it to probably 1,000 other couples, but I loved this. He and his wife had a happy half hour every day, every weekday from I think it was 5:30 to 6 or whatever it was. They had a half hour. They would sit. They had this little balcony off their bedroom. Aren't they lucky? I know, very nice, right? But they had this little balcony off the bedroom. They would go sit on the balcony and have a drink together or like a special snack, or they would just hang out and they would bond for a little while. And the kids knew it was sacred. Don't bother us. We have a half hour. Like we got this half hour. If you bother us, we're going to, it's going to be the end of you. So, and that was a habit they had weekdays, and it was really beautiful. And it was a great way to connect instead of just sort of going on autopilot all night with the kids. So the bottom line is you're going to form relationship habits. You already have. The key is to create them intentionally so they helped you build a connected and happy relationship with yourself and everyone around you. That is really what you're trying to do. And the best way really to break an old habit is to stop focusing on trying not to do it and instead to be putting in these new habits. That's really how you get that done. It's even, when I talk to people about giving up old friendships that are really destructive, I always say to them, focus on just creating new friendships right now. Do that first. Focus on the kind of friendships you do want and creating friendships you do want. It becomes much easier to let go of old relationships. And it also, you have less time for them anyway. It just becomes so much more of a natural evolution instead of, cutting people off and unfollowing them and blocking them or, telling them some conversation, I'm done with you. It's, you don't have to do all that. You can just create new friendships and let the old ones go. There's ways to, and I've talked about that in other podcasts, but see what I'm saying? So try not to think so much on what you're not trying to do and instead focus on what you are trying to do by shifting that routine. And again, the rewards, the feelings of freedom, relaxation, the exhale, that you have to make sure stays intact. And that's the biggie for a lot of people. So you have to think about what else could you give yourself besides the drink, okay, with that client I was talking about. What else could you give yourself besides the drink that's going to help you feel more relaxed? And so for her, we did a thing. It's so funny. She ended up using my habit of coming home and she immediately would go in and she just took time to take off her makeup and to do all these beautiful things to her face. She had like an Omnilux mask, which I also use, by the way. Like it's like red light therapy or whatever. She would do that for 10 minutes. Like she had a whole thing and she just told the kids, like, I need a half hour. I will be down in a half hour and we will deal with it then. And sometimes you don't have a half hour. Sometimes you have 10 minutes, 15 minutes, but you take something, right? I have another, a dad I work with who they have young kids, young boys who are very high need and it's a lot. But for him, their garage is detached. So the kids don't always know when he's home. And I have him come home, get in the garage, and then he sits in his car and he listens to a ball game or he, streams something because now he's in the internet in his home, he has little things he does while he's out in his car in the garage or he just sits in the garage. He's made like a comfy little place for himself out there. And he takes 15 minutes before he walks in the house. Like there's things you can do, right? So you're changing the routine. Another thing we did for this client I was talking about, I'm going back with the woman who always had a drink, parking in her garage and then always walking through to the refrigerator and going inside. Instead, I had her park outside, not in the garage. So she had to go in the front door. Just changing that part of the routine, she said, was actually the most powerful because the trigger remember those action triggers are for good or for evil, right? So that action trigger of pulling into the habit over and over and over, pulling in her garage, getting out of her car, grabbing a bottle of wine and walking into the house, that was huge to break. So it becomes so difficult to still pull in the garage, right? And just bypass the refrigerator every time. But instead, she just went in a different door. I've had clients go in a back door or a side door instead of the front door. I've had people in their jobs go in a different door. Do you see what I'm talking about here? You have to think about, and then again, but you have to have some sort of reward still. Maybe that is 15 minutes of social media, but you time it on your phone. Maybe that, to help you just detach. Maybe those are games on your phone. Maybe that's getting a Sudoku book and doing some puzzles for 20 minutes or 15 minutes or 5 minutes. You have to figure out what it is that will still give you the reward. What could you do instead where you still get the reward? So don't, for example, do not say, oh, instead I'll go meditate when you hate meditation because you're not getting the reward. Don't say, oh, I'll go to the gym instead when you have never gone to the gym, right? Instead of drinking, I'll go to the gym. No, you won't. That's not giving you the reward you're looking for. Yes, if you went to the gym, if you made that a new habit and you were getting a lot of positive feedback for it in your brain, then yes, eventually that could be a reward, but it's not now. So what you're doing is figuring out what could be a little different. I had another woman, an executive I worked with, who was always late for meetings, and it was becoming such a huge problem that her board got involved. She just was tortured getting to meetings on time. So we were like, okay, what's the routine, with her assistant, and how do we change things? And so she had a new routine because she always did things till the very last minute that she would she had to get to the meetings 15 minutes early. I think we started with 5 minutes. We started with 5 minutes, eventually became 15 minutes early. And my wonderful client was from Great Britain, and she loved some rag magazine called like the Tatler. I'm sorry if you're listening, if you're the Tatler, I don't know, but apparently it's like the United States, we have the National Enquirer. It's like one of those sort of magazines that has a lot of untruths in it. She loves this thing, and she would get it because I guess there's a Tatler here in the United States, but she got the British version. Like she was not having it. And so her reward was sitting in the meetings and having a few minutes with her Tatler before anyone got there. I know, do you love it? So she'd put her feet up and she'd read. And sometimes people would come in the meeting early. Other people are early, right? And she would let them know, like, there's no talking to me. I'm not here. And she would actually not sit at the table wherever they were having the meeting. She would sit off to the side. And people got it after a while. They wouldn't even talk to her. And she would just have these few minutes. She'd put in her AirPods. She'd be listening to I don't even know what. And she would just have a few minutes with her Tatler. There's a reward. There's a great reward, and you change the routine, and it all works together. Do you see what's happening here? So there's ways to think about that. Again, what am I really getting from what's my real reward, and what are my other ways to get it that are so, so important that you figure out, which again is why I think you should download the quick sheet so you got to do this a few times. I'm just telling you, like you go through it a few times to really get what the reward is. And if you're always putting that, I just feel good. You can't put feel good. That's not, what is it? And I'm telling you, it's usually a release of tension. It's usually a lessening of anxiety. It's usually an exhale, an escape, a redirection of attention. It's something, I'm telling you, that's very important for you to notice anyway to get better at changing. Okay? All right. I think I covered all the pieces today. I was very excited to bring you this episode because I know how much so many of you struggle with, trying to figure this out. And I'm always giving you new tips. And then you're like, but I use them for a minute and then I don't keep using them. But when you can get clearer on this piece, and you add this to the arsenal and what you're already doing with your mindfulness and all your other pieces, I am telling you, you're going to really see some changes that have real legs. They last. You have long-term changes. And that's what I want for you. Okay, that's it for today. Again, please remember to let me know what you would like to see or hear or have on a Patreon. Maybe it's a worksheet with every episode. I don't know. What would be worth your money, to have that kind of support. And I would appreciate the support, of course. And obviously it'll be not a lot of money to pay every month, but I really want to know what would be valuable to you. And because no matter what else, I want to create a different kind of community where I have more access to you and you have more access to me, where there's just more love in the tribe, is really what I'm going for here, and being able to sustain that in that way. And obviously, I need to make money to sustain it in that way. So I'm trying to be really thoughtful and ingenious, and really give you what you're looking for to make your life better. That's what we're here for. That's what I'm here for. All right. If no one told you this week, I love you. You deserve beautiful, great things in your life. Please do not give up on yourself ever. Absolutely, you can achieve the things you're looking for. We just have to put in the right tools to get there. All right. Have an amazing week, and I'm going to talk to you real soon.